Hi, welcome back to Common Sense Care, Parenting Gender-Confused Children with Truth and Love. So-called affirmative care is the gender industry's one-size-fits-all answer for any and all children and youth who struggle with their identity. In no other area of medicine, education, or psychology is one treatment plan assigned to every person. At Partners for Ethical Care, we believe that each child is an individual and should be receiving the care that is most appropriate for him or her. Welcome back. I'm Maria Keffler.
And I'm Erin Brewer. And Maria, what's the topic for the day?
Topic for today is dealing with the school.
Whew. And who would have thought this would end up being such a big issue? But boy, when I talk to parents, I am just overwhelmed with the stories that they have. And for people who don't know, these are stories of parents who don't even know that their child has taken on a transgender identity, and they find out that their daughter's been using the boys' restroom for the last year, or they find out that the teachers have been calling their child by a different name and different pronouns, or they find out that their teacher is hiding clothes for their child, so that child comes to school and changes so they present as a different sex than they were born. So this is very powerful to know that there's this institution that we used to trust that is now actively undermining parents and children's best interests.
I think people don't appreciate how deceptive schools are being. We still think, no, schools are our partners. You know, we send our kids there to be educated, and that's what they're doing. But unfortunately, they're not trustworthy anymore.
No.
And the deception is active. The American School Counselors Association, the ASCA, which is the largest organization of school counselors in America, they have a policy statement out about transgender students and how counselors should deal with them. And right in there, there's a clause that says that the counselor should use different pronouns and name at school than when they're talking to the parents if the student doesn't want the parents to know yet. So that's codified deception. And it's not actually legal. It's not okay, because one thing that parents need to know is that the Federal Education Rights and Protection Act, FERPA, says that parents have a right to see and know everything that the school knows about the child. There is nothing that is legal for the school to hide about a child from the child's parents or guardians. Unfortunately, the school is not obeying FERPA. It is not following FERPA. It's following these guidelines that places like GLSEN, the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, and Planned Parenthood, and the Human Rights Campaign Foundation, which is the LGBTQ lobby and funding group. Schools are following their guidance. They are not following FERPA. And unfortunately, it's probably going to take lawsuits before this resolves, but parents need to know that this is happening in schools.
Well, and they need to know it's not just happening in big city schools. It's happening in schools in rural Utah. It's happening in schools in Indiana, in Montana. It's happening in schools across the nation. I was really shocked by a presentation that was given to Utah teachers recently by the Utah Board of Education. They actually had an activist organization come in and really suggest to teachers that if they weren't going to be allies in this, that they didn't deserve to be around children. And so there's this message now that teachers are getting that if you don't follow this this ideology, if you don't accept this, then you're not worthy of being a teacher even, which is so heavy. These are people, typically people who are very caring about kids who go into education. And so for them to be told you have to do this or it means you don't care about kids, it's again another way to manipulate people into accepting this ideology.
Yeah. In my school district, a teacher just sent the local watchdog organization here, Arlington Parent Coalition, a copy of the new transgender students policy, which the district sent out to teachers and staff. And it said right on top of it, this is an internal document not to be shared outside school. So why do you need to hide something from the families and from the community? So this teacher sent it to Arlington Parent Coalition, and there's a clause at the bottom that talks about if either students or teachers and staff do not comply with these guidelines, they can be disciplined. It's very clear that if you do not follow preferred pronouns, if you do not agree with boys in the bathroom, if you do not agree with hiding things from the families, from parents, student or teacher can be disciplined for that. And just sort of taking that apart and looking at what that means children are required to lie to their parents. Because if your friend Billy comes to school one day and decides that he doesn't want to be Billy anymore, now he's going to be Barbara. But Barbara hasn't told his parents yet. And so the teacher tells the class, we're not sharing this with Barbara's parents. And so you can't share this with your parents. This is just at school. And that's requiring children to lie to their families.
Well, and it's also really scary because it's grooming them. It's preparing them to be deceptive to their parents. It's preparing them to accept that there are some adults that are going to have them do stuff or say things that they're not supposed to share with their parents. This is really setting them up for predators. I mean, this is exactly the kind of thing that predators do in order to gain access to children, and also to identify which children are vulnerable, because it's the kid that goes and tells their parents that, they're the ones who are not vulnerable because they trusted their parents. So it sets up a lot of really, the kids are having to accept a teacher lying to them about, in this case, Billy's actual sex. The kids are told that they're not allowed to be upset about Billy now coming into the girls' facilities. They have to accept that. So on, a number of different levels, this kind of deception is dangerous for kids. It undermines their ability to really reality check, and it undermines their ability to know which adults are trustworthy.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting that you bring up the grooming aspect of this. We actually do have a slide showing grooming behaviors that child predators employ, and people who predate on children, sexual predators, they have a very systematic way that they go about it. And I don't remember if you remember a few years ago in Pennsylvania, there was a coach, Jerry Sandusky, who was caught being a pedophile. And throughout some of the reporting about that, the Washington Post did an interview with a convicted pedophile who was in prison about how he would target children. And he said right in there, child predators try to find work near children because they're trying to find children. And so I certainly do not want to suggest that the bulk of teachers are child predators. Not at all. Most teachers are very trustworthy and love children. But those who want to sexually exploit children will try to get jobs in schools. They'll try to get jobs in daycares. And this man who was in prison, he was a teacher, and he said the first thing I would do if I saw a child that I liked was ask if he could stay after school and help me erase the boards. Very innocent, no problem. But he said what that child told him would let him know whether he could pursue him or not. He said if the child could say, yeah, I can stay after school and do the blackboards, he knew that child was not being watched carefully by parents. If the child said, well, I just need to call home and ask my mom and dad, then that predator said I would go no further with that child because I knew he was being watched carefully by parents. And so for the school to do anything that undermines that protection of the parents is completely unethical and unconscionable, and it does set them up for grooming.
Well, and you mentioned that there are predators who actively want to be around children so they get jobs in the school system. And one of the things that I'm seeing that is incredibly disturbing to me is that schools are now allowing faculty members to self-ID. and staff members to self-ID. So you might have, a teacher who is a male who suddenly says, oh, I'm actually a woman. That teacher now is able to go into the girls' bathrooms, is able to chaperone the girls on overnight trips, is able to go into the locker room facilities with the girls. That is just a really bad idea on so many levels. And then there was a story that I heard about a mother whose daughter was going into the boys' locker room. The mother was very upset about it and contacted the school and said she's worried that her daughter could be victimized when she's in the boys' locker room. And the solution of the school was to have 2 adult teachers accompany her daughter into the locker room when she changed. Oh my goodness, like on so many levels, that just makes me question the sanity of administrators that they thought that was a good idea. So now you have 2 male teachers accompanying a girl into a boys' locker room and watching her as she changes to make sure she's not harassed by the boys. And this mother asked the teachers how they felt about this new responsibility, and they were mortified, but they had to do it because otherwise they were at risk of losing their job.
That's hideous. That is just hideous. Well, and there's a teacher in Wisconsin that he came out to his 5th grade class that he is now, I don't know if he's a woman or non-binary. He goes by Mix, MX.
Right.
And so he came out without even, like, the parents didn't know this was going to happen. He just made this big announcement in his class. But now he has gone on to complain that he has to use the women teachers' bathroom because it's so far away. Why can't he just use the girls' bathroom with the students that's right across the hall from his class? And
Wow.
I don't know the current status of that issue, but that's what he wants. He doesn't know why he should have to be constrained to using the adult women's bathroom. Well, he should be constrained to be using the adult man's bathroom because he's an
Right.
adult male.
Right. And this just makes my toes curl just thinking about the kind of indoctrination this is doing, the kind of way this mixes up kids. I mean, one of the things that's so scary to me is that if you cause kids to question, first of all, question reality. So they're either going to accept what the teacher's saying and question reality, or they're going to realize that the teachers are lying to them. Either situation is bad. If they start to question, fundamental reality, they're not going to be able to make good decisions. They're going to be in trouble. If they know their teacher's lying to them, that's going to undermine their ability to really believe anything that the teachers tell them. So either way, this is just incredibly damaging. And it's just, to me, it's shocking that this is happening in the schools. And I think, as you said, so many parents think, well, that's just happening in Seattle, or that's just happening in New York or something. It's happening in schools all across the nation, and you need to be aware of it. One of the things I did, I live in Utah, which is one of the more conservative states. I contacted all the different school districts in the state to find out what their policy was. Most of them didn't have policies and responded saying that if this comes up, then they'll come up with something. But some of them did have policies, and they were very disturbing policies. They were policies that said that if a boy identifies as a girl, he could access all the spaces of the girls, access all the activities of the girls, and that he would be accepted as a girl. And then we did have districts that said that they would actively undermine parents and deceive them. And so this is happening in one of the more conservative states in the country. If it's happening here, I guarantee it's happening everywhere.
And one of the problems with self ID, and we've talked about this before, what are the guidelines for
Mhm.
that?
Right.
What is required? Because under the current policies, and this is at the school, at the state, at the federal level, current policies for self ID is just, I said so.
Mhm.
Oh, how long? How long does it need to? Oh, today, tomorrow. I just heard from a parent who said that at her husband's workplace, this guidance just came out that in this office they will be allowed to change their gender ID only once per day.
Wow.
That's the policy, once per day.
Oh my
So if
goodness.
I come in the morning and I say I'm a female, I have to be a female all day, but I can come in tomorrow morning and say I'm a male, but then I got to be male all day.
Wow. Wow. Like,
It's laughable, but it's
it
horrific. It's horrific.
is.
So in high schools or any school level, but high school I think is the most problematic for this. A boy can come to school and go, I'd really like to go in the girls' bathroom today, and just say, I'm a girl. I'm a girl.
Today I'm in
There's
girl
nothing
mode.
else required.
Yeah.
There's nothing else required. And I talked to this transgender rights activist in our location here in our district, and he said that will never happen. No high school boy would ever pretend to be transgender. Like,
Wow.
have you met any high school boys?
Yeah.
Because I know quite a few, and a lot of them would do it just for kicks and grins.
Right.
Just to see what would
Or
happen.
dares, their
Dares.
friends might dare them to do it. Or as you said, there might be, at high school level, there are kids who are predators. And what a great opportunity. We just open the door for them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just really scary. Well, I wanted to just share this parent resource guide because
Mm.
what we're talking about is this is hard. This is really heavy stuff. I mean, hearing this, I am so thankful. I don't have kids in elementary school or in public school. They're all out of high school, and I am so thankful because this is just shockingly scary stuff. And this is one guide that you can get that has a lot of good information. We'll include a link to it. You can download it for free, or you can order hard copy. I think they're like $15, but you can get that free copy. And this is just chock full of information that you need to have as a parent. It's some of it is going to be disturbing, and some of the stuff we're talking about is disturbing, but you need to have tools in your toolbox to know how to deal with this. And this is a really good guide. The other thing that I would recommend is if you have kids in school, go to your school board meetings. I know they're kind of, you've already got a lot on your plate, and they tend to be, I've been to school board meetings. I was actually on a school board for a while, and they can be, slow, boring, arduous meetings, but it's really important that you keep track of what's happening at your school. The other thing that I would recommend is do a Freedom of Information Act request. And Maria, can you talk a little bit about this because you're more familiar with how this process works?
Yeah, Freedom of Information Act says that the public has the right to see any it's government things. So you have a right to see what the government is doing. Some people think, oh, this is a big, arduous process. You've got to fill out forms and all that. No, it's actually really, really simple. All you need to do is send a letter or just an email to, and usually schools have a FOIA liaison, but if you don't know who that is, send it to the superintendent, send it to his or her office. Send an email and just state what you want to see. The more specific you are, the more likely you are to get the right information. But you can send a FOIA request and just say, I am requesting under the Freedom of Information Act to see everything related to transgender student policy at your school. We did this in my district. We sent an email and said, because we have a local activist group who we suspected were the ones pushing this stuff into the school. So we sent a FOIA request and we said, we would like to see all communications with outside people or organizations related to transgender student policy.
Wow.
And we got a 30-page, what one of our members called a love fest between the public school and this local activist group. They had been working on this policy for a year and nobody else knew about it. And even after our organization found out about it, we said, we would like to be involved with this. We would like to be present at the next meeting where this is discussed. And the public school said, okay, yep, we'll invite you. Well, a future FOIA request about policy revealed that no, after that, they had another meeting between the school and this activist group and did not invite anybody else to it. So it's really important to know what's going on. About the school board meetings, they're tedious, they're awful. Going to meetings like that, I consider one of the rings of hell. But a lot of them are televised now. You can watch them online, so you don't have to actually go. You can watch it online and see what's happening. But I want to let people know the way this is getting into schools very under the table and surreptitiously. Mm-hmm. This is the way it happened in my district and neighboring districts. The first thing the school board does is slip the words gender identity into the non-discrimination clause. Every school board, every district will have a non-discrimination clause, and that says students cannot, or teachers and students cannot be discriminated against based on race, religion, pregnancy status. There's like 40 things in there. Sexual orientation came in there some years ago. Well, now they just slip gender identity in there, and it seems very innocuous and very kind. We're just being kind. That's the word you hear all the time. It's just about being diverse and inclusive. So that gets in there. But what that does is it opens up the floodgates for schools to say, well, what does it mean to not discriminate against people based on gender? Oh, it means if you think you're a different gender, we have to do whatever you want. And that's where the policy gets slipped in. And when you start seeing these policies come up, transgender students policy with they can, boys and girls bathrooms, boys and girls sports, when you see that, if you push back on it, what you will hear is, well, this has been in the policy, non-discrimination has been in the policy for years. We're just now, laying down specifics about it. So it's very deceptive.
Well, and it's important for people to realize that, somebody might be watching this and think how horrifying that you don't want gender identity protected. But it's important for people to realize that once you protect gender identity, you stop protecting sex. So persons, men and women's rights are no longer protected once you protect gender identity. It circumvents other people's rights. And it might even circumvent sexual orientation. That may also be circumvented by these policies, because if people can go back and forth between what gender they are, then sex no longer means anything. If a man can say, well, my penis is actually female, then it no longer makes any sense what female is. And so this is not about us being discriminatory towards a group. It's us protecting the rights of men and women, and even those with different sexual orientations. This is about protecting the categories that typically are protected under these non-discrimination rules.
When you're dealing with the school and you're negotiating anything with the school, I really recommend trying to get everything in writing. I discovered this the hard way in my district when I first started working on this, and I found out that my district was putting a transgender student policy into place. I sent an email to the school board members, and one of them called me. And at first I was so pleased, like, wow, they really are responsive and they're really taking this seriously. And I had a long conversation with one of the school board members, and I took very copious notes on it. But what I discovered a few months later was not having anything that she said in writing undercut my ability to call her back on that, because she said something exactly the opposite in a school board meeting. And when I emailed her about it, I got this, oh, I don't remember ever saying anything different than that. And so somebody else recommended to me, they said, you always need to try to get everything in writing, because they will try to have phone conversations with you so that there's no record.
And find out what the rules are in your state, because in the state I live in, you can actually record somebody as long as one person knows they're being recorded, which means that basically I can record any conversation that I want to. That's not true in all states, but just you might want to find that out. And like you said, get things in email. Tell them that you prefer to do all this by email, that you want letters sent. And if for some reason you do have a conversation, either face-to-face or over the phone, immediately summarize it, send it to the person and say, I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly, and get them to respond back, yes, that's what happened, because that's documentation. You need to have a paper trail all the way. And it sounds paranoid, but it's so important that you have this documentation, because like you said, they'll lie. They will absolutely lie and say, oh, I never said that, or you misunderstood. You need to have it in writing. The other reason having it in writing is going to be important is eventually there are going to be a lot of lawsuits happening. And if there's documentation, it's going to make it easier for these lawsuits to move forward and for us to regain some sanity in our schools.
And what we found is happening in our district, and I've heard this in other districts too, around some of the family life education curriculum, because a lot of this transgender stuff is getting put in through the family life education program. That's by far not the only place, but they're doing it there. And when you try to find out what's in the family life education, the sex ed, it is almost impossible. In my state in Virginia, parents are supposed to, by law, be able to see everything that's done in the classroom. I can tell you from personal experience, you go to the principal and say, I want to see what's in your family life program for, fourth graders. The principal will send you the state guidelines for here's what the topics we cover. And when you say, no, I want to see what's actually done in the classroom, what books are you using, what slides are you using, what worksheets are you using, she'll say, oh, I don't have access to that. Please ask the teacher. And so you ask the teacher and she says, oh, that's all done at the administration level. So please contact the school board or the superintendent, because that's all kept at the administration level. So you contact the superintendent of the school board, they say, oh no, that's something the principal manages. So you'll need to go to the principal, and it's just past the potato. And you go around and you never see what's done in the classroom. And it sounds really paranoid that we're saying that the schools are doing this, but
They are.
Try it and see if you have any more success.
The other recommendation I would have is to go to the State Board of Education website and drill down. Like that's one of the things I did in Utah, and I was blown away. I started to drill down and I found the actual, I found parent resources, and they were sending people directly to the Trevor Project, directly to GLSEN, which are, these are advocacy groups. These parents are not being given all the information. I found out that teachers were being indoctrinated in this. They're bringing in outside activists to present information to teachers and school districts. And all of this, it was not on the surface. I had to go to this link and then keep going down links to finally get to it, because they don't want it out in the open. They want it buried. And as we talk about this, we're talking about doing all this research, getting FOIA requests, going to school board meetings. It's a lot of work for one person. So one of the things that you did that I think is really valuable is to set up a parent advocacy group where you get like-minded parents together, and you can do this as a team so that one person doesn't have to do all this.
Yeah, we started the Arlington Parent Coalition here in Arlington, Virginia. We started out with just a team of 5 sitting around a kitchen table saying, what are we going to do? We've got to do something. And we started with organizing parents to go to school board members' office hours. And that's where it started. We now have a pretty large membership, and we have a website. If you go to arlingtonparentcoalition.org, that will take you to our website. And when parents, I just got an email yesterday from a parent here in Arlington who said, I just overheard my 2nd grader be told we're still virtual here, so it was online. The 2nd grader's teacher said, oh, you can be a boy or you can be a girl or you can be neither. Anybody can be anything. And so, he sent that to Arlington Parent Coalition. And I said, yeah, I know. I wish I could tell you I'm surprised by that. One of the things we have on our website is a parent report form. And it's just a Google form that when that kind of thing happens, parents can send it in. We write it up and we put it on the website. So that when parents come to our website, they can see, oh, this parent had this happen at this school. This parent had this happen at this school. And I just want to put a plug for anybody. We really need those kinds of organizations in every district. Every school district needs a parent coalition watchdog group. And if you are at all feeling like that's something that you should do, Arlington Parent Coalition is happy to clone our website and give it to you. And then you can tweak whatever you want to tweak for your own district. You do not have to start from scratch.
That is amazing, because it's kind of an overwhelming thought to start something like this, but there is support. The other resource there is out there that's going to be really valuable, it's a new brochure called Navigating the Transgender Landscape, and it's a school resource guide. This guide here is specifically for parents. The Navigating the Transgender Landscape, and I'll link to it, is specifically for schools, for administrators. So you as a parent can give it to your principal or to your school board and say, you know, this is how we would like to have policies developed. And it is a very good handbook. It's very, the way it's written is brilliant. It's not biased. The language is not inflammatory. It is very fact-based. It's cited so that there's, you know, ways for people to investigate the claims that are made and to find out that it's research-based. And this is a way for you to kind of get ahead of the curve if your school board or your principals are still sort of, if they haven't totally bought into this, get this information into their hands. And that way they kind of know how to start formulating policies that are going to protect girls, that are going to be fair to everybody, that aren't going to accept this nonsense that somebody can be born in the wrong body, or that you can be in girl mode one day and boy mode in another, or that you can kind of be somewhere in between because you don't like lipstick or baseball. So you're somewhere in between. Like, all of this is just, you know, trying to convince kids that these regressive sex stereotypes, sex roles, sex-based stereotypes define whether or not you're a man or a woman. And that's just not true. One of the things that we wanted to do is to show you 2 examples of school personnel who actually have gotten fired as a result of standing up to this ideology. The first one is in a parochial school, and I believe it's in England. The second one is right here in the US. And so we're going to go ahead and watch this clip.
Unless specifically stated by that family, everyone else just gets told the pupil you knew was this name and this pronoun, from this day will be this name and this pronoun. And that's just staff who interact with the children. Governors just get told we have a pupil who is socially transitional, and that is it.
There wasn't the opportunity for disagreement. We couldn't communicate with parents, we couldn't discuss this as governors, we couldn't form procedure, we couldn't consider any of the practical issues. We just had to go ahead as we were told.
Is it okay if I could share some different viewpoints that staff could take away, just so that I'm not asking?
No, I don't think so, John. I'm sorry, it's training today. It's not time to share your viewpoint.
I think what deeply concerns me is that within a primary school environment, without the information that we need for due diligence as governors, for the safeguarding of this child and the safeguarding of other children, we're being told we must go down a particular route. We're being kept blind. And what's more, we're being told what to think.
You are all now honorary mermaids, whether you want to be or not.
But when I explained to my principal that I couldn't in good conscience pronounce masculine pronouns to refer to a girl, he gave me an official written reprimand and said it was the first step in a process that would lead to my termination.
That's just, it's horrifying to me that this is what's happening to teachers.
Yeah.
That teachers are being taught by these outside activist organizations that they have to do certain things that are very much against a lot of people's consciences and sense of fact and sense of reality.
Yeah, in that one video, I believe it's in England, the administrator is telling everybody that they're now honorary mermaids. And for people who don't know what that means, Mermaids is this incredibly well-funded organization in the UK that has pushed this agenda incredibly hard. They've even gotten like Starbucks to sponsor them. I mean, it's an incredibly powerful organization. And people are these teachers and staff are being told, you are now mermaids, whether you like it or not. Mm-hmm. You will ascribe to this ideology, or you will face termination. Again, that teacher who got fired because he called out the pronoun of a student who didn't identify as the sex she was born. So maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's particularly insidious, that this student who was a female 1 year came back the next year and said, now I'm a male, I want male pronouns, and here's my new name. And the administration tried to pressure Peter Vlaming to use her preferred pronouns, the male pronouns. And he said that he did not feel, his conscience did not let him do that, that he did not believe that it's possible for somebody to be in the wrong body, but he agreed just not to use pronouns. He just wouldn't use pronouns. I believe he used her preferred name. I believe he used that, you know, as a nickname. But yeah, then in the classroom, there's this activity happening, and they were doing some sort of a like blindfold partner exercise, and she was about to trip or run into something, and he called out to her partner, "Stop her, you know, help her." It was a knee-jerk reaction because she is a her. And we all know that she is a her. And so he wasn't intentionally misgendering her. He had tried very hard to be respectful, but that wasn't good enough. And that this teenage girl can have a 25-year veteran teacher fired for accidentally saying a pronoun, one word that she didn't like. He said one word that she didn't like, and he got fired. How can any reasonable person say, yeah, that's the world we want to live in?
Yeah, it's just it's extremely disturbing, and it's not just in the U.S. I've talked to teachers in Australia who are deciding to not be teachers anymore because they can't, in good conscience, follow this ideology, and they know that they're going to be fired if they try to go in and teach. And so it's what's happening is it's separating, you know, the teachers who have a conscience about this are actually leaving, and we're left with only those who really are fervently buying into this ideology. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that, you know, in the list of non-discrimination, the categories, one of them tends to be religion. And in this case, the trans ideology is trampling all over many religious beliefs. There are many, many religions who are uncomfortable with having boys sharing showers, bathrooms, locker rooms with girls. And this is part of their religious belief system, and it's being trampled on. Somehow, again, this the gender ideology somehow overrides protections, religious protections, sex-based protections, sexual orientation protections. And so it's incredibly disturbing to know that this one group who, as you said, there's no litmus test. Anybody can claim to be anything, any day, apparently.
Only once a day, only once.
Yeah, and they are going to be protected over people who have, you know, who are something, you know, who are demonstrably, testably something. And so it really, it's very scary to me to know that we're prioritizing one group's rights, and they're based on feelings. Maybe we don't even know if it's based on feelings, because people can pretend, people can lie about gender identity, so because there is no litmus test. We're going to prioritize their rights and privileges and protections over everybody else. That's really disturbing.
It is. And I really look at this and I think, okay, gender ideology is the new religion. And we talked about that in an earlier episode, that it's a very cultic. And when you get into the weeds on what they really believe and think, I mean, it's very much a religion, because it's based on your feelings. It's based on this faith in your own inner thoughts and feelings, and there's no other basis for it. And there's a lot of contradictory information in it, a lot of places that it's not logical, but it really does fall into the category of religion. And so the school, by putting all of their, all the force of law and policy behind this religion, they are completely trampling on everyone else's rights. And I would say everyone else's rights, because the trans-identified person has complete carte blanche gold ticket to do, say, demand, get whatever they want, wherever they want it. And there is no one who is allowed to tell them no about anything.
Yeah, it's really disturbing. And again, there are these resources that we have about sort of as a parent, what can you do to manage this and how to influence your school. We also have a couple of parent questions. The first one is, I found out that my 13-year-old autistic daughter has been using the boys' bathroom at school. 13 years old, autistic. I told the principal I do not want my autistic 8th grade girl in the bathroom alone with boys. He told me that that's the school's policy, that kids can choose which bathroom to use. How do I protect my daughter? And again, these school policies are just mind-boggling, that school administrators are just willing to say that the kids can decide. And there's actually some schools in England that did this for a while. And the girls ended up skipping a lot of school. They would not go to school when they were menstruating because they were uncomfortable menstruating when they were, having boys in the bathroom. There were girls who were getting bladder infections because they were afraid to use the bathroom. There was a case in the US where a girl was sexually assaulted by a boy who was allowed to go into the girls' bathroom. So it's not that this is just a frivolous concern about, parents being overly modest or prudish. These are legitimate concerns. We have sex-separated facilities because there is a risk, and we need to protect girls from that risk. So what recommendations do you have for this parent whose school just says, sorry, that's our policy?
That's really hard. And the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear that story is that the school has just told the parent that they have greater authority over that child than the parent has.
Yeah.
To me, that was a big middle finger to the parent. We don't care what you think. We don't care what you want for this child. Our policy is more important than your authority over your child. If at all possible, I would get that child out of the school. Sadly, I really think these policies are not going to get revoked until people start getting hurt. Unfortunately, I hate to even say this, but it's going to take girls being assaulted. It's going to take people getting hurt before somebody says, whoa, these policies are bad ideas. So if at all possible, I would get that child out of the school. As far as pushing back, it may take a lawsuit. At the very least, if you can't get your child out of that school, I would send a letter with the FERPA policy about, that parents have rights in education. I would look up the school's policy on what is their policy on other things where parents and the school differ. What is the school's policy on that, and try to apply those. I would pull up the religious rights that, my religion, whatever it is, says that my daughter should not be in a state of undress with boys. Get creative, every possible thing you can think of. If your child has an IEP, which is an individualized
this child is autistic, and so this child probably might have an IEP. If not, they might have a 504 plan, either one of which parents can sort of influence how this goes, and maybe put in that plan, like, my child will not use restrooms of the opposite sex because it will put her at risk.
Once you get something into an IEP, that is really powerful. The schools are bound to do what is in the IEP. So if your child has an IEP, I would utilize that. I would milk that for all it's worth. Get everything in there that you want for your child's protection, and try to go that way.
And it's very reasonable. This is a 13-year-old girl who has autism. This is a child who's at risk being in boys' facilities. This is a girl that needs protection. And so as a parent, I would fight so hard in this case, either fight the school or get that child into a different school or homeschool them, because they are incredibly vulnerable. And again, at 13, if they start going down this road where they're affirmed, and that's what's happening at the school, it's much more likely they're going to be medicalized and damaged for life.
Yeah. We've got one more question. This one, my son came back from his first semester at college and announced that he's a woman. The school refuses to talk to me about it because he's an adult. What do I do?
That's a really good question, and there are some factors that will play into how much power, how much influence a parent can have over this, because it's an adult child. Actually, even if it's not an adult child, if they're in college, say it's a 17-year-old who's in college, the school's going to be very hesitant to share anything with you. You do have power of the purse strings, perhaps. That is one of the things that you have, and you are allowed to say to your child, look, I'm paying for your college, therefore I get to have access to your records, and the child can go and allow you to have access to records. The other thing you can do is if you're not paying for that child to be in school, is to say, I love you very much, but when you're staying in my house, I'm not going to affirm you. You are my son. I love you very much, but I'm not going to accept that you were born in the wrong body. That's just not true. And so some of it has to do with whether or not a parent is paying for the college experience. If they are, they have more power. They can also just, insist, if you want to go to school, we need you to get some different help to resolve these issues.
I don't have a lot of experience with kids in college because my kids are still young. Now, my oldest, who's a senior in high school, he's doing his senior year dual enrollment at the local community college. And what you said about giving the parent access to the records, he's only 17 and I am still his legal guardian. But every time I have called to register him for classes or whatever, I have to put him on the phone, and he gives the school permission to talk to me. So they sent me a form. If you have him fill out this form and sign it, then that will give us access to your records. I'm just almost thinking, maybe parents just need to do that. When your kid goes off to college, see if you can get that form filled out, sort of as a preventive. You can tell your child, I want to be able to help with any records issues you have. I want to be able to coordinate. And if you can get your child to fill out one of those forms so you have access, that might give you a little bit more leeway for dealing with things like this.
And especially if the university has a college health system. I know where I went to college, they had, on-campus healthcare. My parents had no idea what was going on. I could go in and pretty much do have any kind of treatment there, and they wouldn't know. And I've heard parents say this: their child left a boy and came back a girl, medicalized by the college health system, and the parents have no recourse. They can't even access the records. And so again, you can have your child sign a waiver. And if they're not willing to do that, again, we talked about boundaries in one of these issues, and you have to identify, what do you have control over and what don't you have control over? And if your child is paying their way in college, you don't have a lot of control over that. If they've gotten scholarships, you don't have a lot of control. But if you're paying for college, well, then you start to have a little bit of control, and you can determine how much of that control you want to leverage in this situation.
Well, and it is important for parents to realize that most universities are on board with this, not just on board, but are wholeheartedly. There was an article, Penny Nance is the author of it. I'm trying to think what it was in, but she wrote about taking her son to his freshman orientation and I'm not going to say which university because I can't remember for sure, but it's one of the big universities here in Virginia, one of the big state schools. And the whole orientation was about gender identity, and everybody had on their card their name and their preferred pronouns. And she said, I was horrified, like the whole orientation was about this. And I talked to a therapist who told me that she had a client that she had worked with anxiety. She's on the autism spectrum. She had anxiety issues, and she had been working with this girl for years. The girl went off to college and came home the first summer and said she was a man. And so the parents apparently kept the girl home because the therapist said she started working with the girl over that coming year, and it took about a year. And the girl came around and realized that no, she was not in fact a man, she was a girl. Well, she went back to that big state school here in Virginia, And the school counselor actually told her that she should not come back to school, that she should transfer somewhere else because the transgender community would be very unfriendly to her. Well, the girl went back and she got bullied. She got treated so badly and threatened that she was scared for her safety and ended up leaving the university. And I said, this is a major state school that tens of thousands of people attend, and they can't protect or won't protect this girl. It was just horrifying to
Once
me.
again, the rights and protections of a group of people who claim something are overriding other people's protections. And I've said this before, this is the most bullying ideology I've ever come across. I mean, it's just outrageous to me. And even in my, local university here in northern Utah, they've bought into this. Everybody gets to select which pronouns they go by, and it's just assumed. And the problem is once you assume that somebody gets to choose which pronouns they prefer, you've bought into this ideology. The university also has a group of students who claim to identify as transgender, who go into different classrooms and talk about the hardships of being transgender. I mean, it's so entrenched, and it really is shocking. And so one of the recommendations I would have for people who have kids who are, late high school or starting college is to really investigate your options for college. I would stay away from big universities. And it's unfortunate. Again, these are public institutions that should be our go-to, but they've been infiltrated. And so try to find maybe a small community college, maybe find a religious institution that you can, feel comfortable with, maybe find a private school that hasn't bought into this ideology.
Well, and you mentioned about students, transgender identified students in colleges going into classrooms. That's happening in high schools.
Yeah.
We have 2 documented examples just here in my district in high schools where the GSA Club, the Gender and Sexuality Allies, are being invited into other classrooms to give presentations on gender identity. At one point, the student taught sexual orientation and gender identity in a PE class during the health portion of it. And there's so much wrong with that. I mean, this is a little tangential. I don't want to go off into this too much. But what the schools and the NEA are doing is they're promoting this peer-led sex ed. And when I first heard that term, I was like, that sounds familiar to me. What is that reminding me of? And I realized it's peer-to-peer sales. The marketing community has leveraged peer-to-peer sales to really use social pressure to make sales. So when somebody invites you to their home for a baking goods party or, a candle party or a clothing party, they're leveraging that peer pressure that, oh, you're at my house, I've served you food, and you feel like, oh, I really should buy something while I'm here. The schools have adopted that and they're calling it peer-to-peer or peer-led sex ed. And it's just using peer pressure to force this down kids' throats. Because when you're a freshman in high school and a junior comes and tells you, this is a fact and you need to get on board with it, how many freshmen are going to go, no, I don't agree with you about that?
Yeah, I mean, we know about the dangers of peer pressure. That's something, when I was in high school, they talked about it all the time, that you had to be very careful because peers could influence you into doing bad behavior, smoking, drinking, doing things that were dangerous, driving when drunk. This is something that we've known about for ages, that peers have incredible credentials with their peers, especially older peers. If you've got a child who's a couple years older, they can exert tremendous pressure. And then you've got the schools also putting that pressure. And then you've got cases where children who don't ascribe to this ideology in the schools, who maybe call somebody by the correct pronoun and that person doesn't like it, those kids are getting in trouble with the administration. They're not just being bullied by other kids, they're actually getting in trouble. They're getting punished for not ascribing to this. So it's incredibly disturbing. This is about bullying. This is about, exerting control over kids. And again, if you don't follow it, if you don't do what we say, you're in trouble. And the fact that they're actually punishing children for telling the truth, for saying the truth, that's incredibly scary.
It's very scary. And at the very heart of this is schools separating parents from their kids.
Mhm.
Because when the teacher says there's no such thing as boys and girls, and the little kid says, Mom and Dad told me that boys have a penis and girls have a vagina, and the teacher says, that's just silly, your parents are wrong. That's forcing that child to make a decision between, do I believe this person? Do I believe this person? That's unconscionable. That is
Yeah.
absolutely unconscionable to do to children.
Right. It's really disturbing. And it's so heartbreaking that this is so entrenched in the schools. And the good news is that parents can make a difference. And we do have, if we get enough parents who are concerned about this, they can make a difference. I think that sometimes we forget that, you get 50 parents to go to a school board meeting who are upset about something, it's going to make a difference. And so part of this is finding out what's going on, organizing, and being willing to stand up against this and say, no, we are not going to allow our children to be indoctrinated into this ideology.
Well, and I want to leave also with that same hope. We've said a lot of things that are probably disturbing and disheartening to parents. But you're right, when parents start working together and pushing back on this, you do have success. We had a success in my district with the Arlington Parent Coalition. We have on our website, and our Partners for Ethical Care also has this document on our website as well. It's a universal opt-out letter. So it's a letter that says, I want my child not to encounter any information on gender identity, on lists. These are the things I don't want my child to be introduced to anywhere at school, any class, any whatever. And we put that out, and parents have started sending those into the school. Well, we heard roundabout that it caused a big uproar in the administration, in that they were consulting their lawyers, like, are these aren't the standard letters, are these legal? What do we have to do here? And we heard that the director of Family Life Education told teachers, just stay in your lane. Only teach what's in your content area until we get this figured out.
Oh, good.
Now, I don't know where they're at with getting that figured out. I think they'll
Right.
find a way around it eventually. But you can do that. That is one of the benefits of having these watchdog groups, is mobilizing lots of parents to do that. And it lets the school know, you're being watched. We don't like what's happening. You may think you have the whole culture behind you, but you don't.
Yes. And it's hard, but you can do it, and it's worth it. These are our children.
Yeah.
So heavy topic. What's up for next week?
Next week, we are going to talk about dealing with the world and the extended family. When you have a transgender identified child, it can be really hard feeling like the whole world is pushing back on you. You don't have any allies, even, sometimes you got family that's not on your side with this. So we're going to explore a little bit how to navigate that.
Okay, well, that sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Maria.
We are not doctors or therapists. We are not giving medical or psychiatric advice, and we offer no guarantee of outcomes. We simply want to talk about how to support and love kids using long understood best practices from the fields of psychology, education, and child development. We're glad you joined in our conversation today, and we hope that you took away something you can put in your toolkit for parenting your gender-confused kids with truth and